So you want to open a game store, or at least you're thinking about it. But it can be hard to find information on how to do that, and it's a huge endeavor to open a game store. So I've put together a series of videos, this is the first one, where I'm going to kind of run through everything I could think of just off the top of my head, and maybe that'll help you out. Originally, I set this out as like 16 points I wanted to go over and filmed it all in one big go, and it was like an hour and 10 minutes long. And I thought people are going to be hard-pressed to want to sit through an hour-long video. Plus, that's a lot of information to digest, so I'm going to break it up into little chunks around 15 minutes each. And this is the first one. We're going to talk about writing a business plan, financials, and location. So let's get into it. The first question you got to ask yourself is, why do you want to open a game store? And there's a million reasons to open a game store. And hopefully they're centered around a combination of your love of games with your love of business and melding that together into one superpower, which is game store ownership. But there's some not so great reasons for opening a game store, and I'm going to cover those because I think those are more important than the driving reason to get you to open a store. I think one of the big ones that I know firsthand, because another store owner in my area had this as his reason for opening a store, and it did end up working out. As far as I know, he still owns his store to this day, but it's not a great foundation to build upon, and that is opening a store because you want to play games and have some place to hang out with your buddies and do it. I'm not saying that can't work, but it's not a great foundation that's going to foster good customer service and good processes and procedures in your store to guarantee that you're going to be successful. So I'm not saying that that's a no-go, but definitely think about what you're doing if you're opening a store because you just want a fun place to hang out and play games with your friends. Another popular reason, although not great reason to open a game store, is that you are so mad by your experience at another game store that you decide to open one out of revenge or spite. And while, again, that could work if you at some point reevaluate your motives and decide to change course, I'm going to say a game store built on a foundation of revenge or hate of another store, probably not a great way to start. The last one is if you're opening a game store because you think it'd be cool to play games all day. Because I can tell you firsthand, if you're running a good quality game store, most of your time is going to be spent making sure that everyone else is playing games all day. And that means you probably won't be. I'm not saying you can't squeeze a game in here or there after hours or whatever it is. If you think you're just going to be playing games most of the time, it's not going to be the case. So that wraps up this one. Let's move on to the next point. Now, once you've decided that you are going to push ahead on the game store ownership front, then I think the first thing you've got to do is write a business plan. And I know that is not something that was at the top of my list of super fun things to do, but I will say that my friend and mentor Lloyd Brown was absolutely fundamental in getting this done. I don't think gamers would be anywhere near what it is today or any of my other store ventures if it wasn't for him. He really understands the nuts and bolts of game store ownership. He's been a game store owner multiple times over many years, more than I have. And he offers a service where he will help you put together a business plan at lloydwrites.com. He's not sponsoring this. I've just known him for a long time, and he's a good person to have when you want to bounce ideas off of or really dig into the nuts and bolts. I don't understand all of this stuff probably near as well as I should, but Lloyd certainly does, and he helps put it into some sort of a structured document that not only you can use to help keep you on course when you're working on your game store, but also you can take this to a bank. This document right here got me my small business loan. So that was worth it in of itself. And I'm not going to get into all the details because, this is my business plan for one, but also it covers a lot of details for gamers in the Flint area, and it's not going to be relevant to you, but just to give you an idea of the kind of nuts and bolts that he gets into when he works on a business plan like this. Details on products and services descriptions, which covers the tabletop products, tabletop services, LAN services. Gamers had a cyber cafe for the first couple of years it was open. Covers tournaments, leagues, special tournaments, LAN center events, market comparison for the LAN, market comparison for the tabletop, development, industry analysis, marketplace analysis, pricing strategy, supply chain strategy, advertising and promotion strategy, operations strategy, scope of operations, ongoing operations, company organization, management team, financial assumptions, financial forecast, funding requests, inventory, furnishings, fixtures, management, break-even analysis. It works better if you can read it. But that is an invaluable tool. I think you absolutely have to have one. I know it's a daunting task. Me and Lloyd worked on this thing for months. He was very generous with his time. He answered a pile of questions. Even after the store was open, he answered questions for me. So whether you check out Lloyd or somebody you know, family, friend, you pay another service to do it, find somebody who understands the gaming industry, because writing a business plan for a game store is not the same as just buying a template from, Intuit or somebody. I don't know who does business plan templates, but you want something that's catered to you, and like a lot of my suggestions I'm going to have, sometimes you do have to put some money out in order to get the ball rolling on this game store if you really want to put every effort you can into being successful. Okay, now you got your business plan in place, you need to secure some kind of financing, and I don't know how you're going to go about doing that. Maybe you're going to get a loan from the bank or small business loan, borrow from relatives. Maybe you have funds available, maybe you inherited some money. But that is probably going to be your most important step. But that is also where your business plan comes into effect right off the bat, is it helps you understand what costs you're going to have going forward and what kind of projected revenue streams you can expect to have, which I know projected revenue stream is just a corporate-y way to say that you're going to guess how much money you'll get. But if you're working with somebody that knows the gaming industry, then they should be able to give you some kind of an idea based on your demographics, what sort of revenue you can expect to have coming in. I'll put up on the overhead right now this cash flow projection, and you can see this is the first 12 months of Gamer Sanctuary, and it starts out at almost a $7,000 negative cash flow. Even when you get to the 12th month, you're still looking at a negative cash flow of $600, but we're trending in the right direction. And that's something you need to have. You want to be able to understand what all your expenses are going to be and what you can kind of guesstimate to be your income. But one of the things you want to bear in mind is don't get exactly the amount of money you need to open a game store. I think it was the founder of Dell once said that one of the biggest problems a new company can have is too much capital. And that is absolutely the case. If you have a big pile of money, then you will spend it on things you don't necessarily need. It's actually better, I think, in my opinion, to be working on a little bit more of a shoestring budget, because it forces you to be hypercritical about every purchase you're making. And I can tell you personally, it gets overwhelming when you're dealing with contractors and building out your location. You're buying fixtures, you're buying products, you're buying computers, you're looking at a point of sales, you're dealing with merchant services. All that stuff, you start to get, it's like a tidal wave of stuff. And you just don't want to deal with this. You just start picking things. You start picking the easiest thing. And that is not a great way to set yourself up for success. So you want to be able to understand where the money's going and how much money you expect to be coming in so you can balance those two facets out. But the biggest thing you want to do is have money set aside to cover expenses. Looking at this cash flow projection, you can see that it's negative all the way into the first year. Now, that's not saying you're going to be running a negative bank account for all of those months, but if you figure it's going to cost you, let's say $50,000 to open your game store, that's covering build out, fixtures, furnishings, software, hardware, and inventory, you're not going to open the door and immediately start selling things right off the bat. You're going to open the store for the first time and maybe get a customer, maybe a couple of customers. Maybe if you do really great marketing, you might get a nice little flood of customers. But once that initial, huzzah, wears off, it's going to trickle down and you're going to be dealing with onesie, twosie customers starting out. It's going to be very slow going forward. And you don't want to be going into the negative, literally, because you spent every penny you have building out the store and getting it filled with stuff. So let's say if you have $50,000 that you're going to need to set up the store, figure how much your expenses are going to be for the next 6 to 12 months. I think maybe even 18 months wouldn't be a terrible way to go. That way, if you don't get a single customer in the store, you can still cover payroll, rent, utilities, and all that stuff. You do not want to be in a bind right out of the gate. That is a terrible way to do things, and you'll just be setting yourself up for failure. Finding a location. Now, in the real estate game, it's location, location, location. I know it's very cliche to say, and whatever. That's what it is. And with a game store, you're not too far off base with that either. Now, I'm not going to say that you can't survive or even thrive as a game store in the Boondocks, because I know of some game stores that are 45 minutes from everything, and they've been around for decades, and they're still a very beloved game store. But again, this is one of those things that just because you can do it and get away with it doesn't mean you should do it. The goal here should not be to find out like how many odds you can beat, but it should be to stack the deck in your favor so that you can set yourself up for success. Because at the end of the day, that should really be the goal. It's the goal for you, for your employees, and your customers. It doesn't do anybody any good to have a game store that pops up and closes 6 months later because it was at a terrible location, had terrible lease agreement, ran out of money right away and had to close. That doesn't work out well. So you don't want to be getting into all of that. So what you do want is to find a good quality location that you can afford. And a good rule of thumb that my mentor Lloyd told me is that if the town can support a theater, the regular movie theater, chances are it can support a game store. Now that metric does change somewhat if there is already a game store in the area. That doesn't mean it won't support two, but it doesn't mean that it will either. So you got to look into that. If the game store in the area is real heavy into Magic and D&D, but you're looking to get real heavy into the hobby miniature side of things and do 40K and War Machine, Hordes, Malifaux, and all that stuff, then maybe you'll be fine. You can have a symbiotic relationship with that store. But if you're looking to open a store that's going to compete directly with the other store, that is something you want to take into consideration. So location is a big one. You really want to be mindful of that. Try to find the best spot you can where there's easy access, easy parking, super easy directions to give over the phone or online. You do not want to be giving like weird outer space directions where, okay, go past the big rock and then turn right, but watch for the hidden drive because you want to go down that. But if you go all the way to the end, that's a chain link fence and that's a mess. You gotta, it's weird. You want to be able to just tell people, get off the highway, 3 miles on Main, turn right, there's the parking. And you want someplace that people can easily get in and then get out of. Because if they're going to a tournament or something and they're there all day, the last thing they want to do is fiddle around with weird parking or have to get there hours ahead in order to get a good parking spot because it's limited. So bear that in mind as well. Now, while you're getting all this location stuff sorted out, you're also going to want to check your demographics. City-data.com. I think it's .com or .org. I'll put the link in the description. But they have a lot of demographic information. That's where I got everything for my business plan. And there's also websites you can go online. I think usually your local Department of Transportation will have traffic volume. So you can check and see if you have a couple of options in your town, find the one that has the highest flow of traffic. I think at the time of opening, Miller Road in Flint, which is where Gamers opened, had traffic data of, I want to say it was like 28,000 cars a day going down Miller Road. And of course, it does not mean that many people will stop at your store, of course. But obviously, the more people driving by, the greater your chances that they're going to stop in or see your sign or think to themselves, I'm going to come back later and check that place out. So bear that in mind. You're also going to check with your county or township clerk to see if there's any kind of special licenses you need. A lot of times they do require at least a business license, but there may be other licensures that you got to cover, and you want to make sure you have that. You do not want to be surprised the day you open or the week you open with a city or government official showing up and telling you that you did all this stuff wrong. There may be fines involved, but at the very least, it's a headache that you're going to have to stop everything and deal with. And you want to be reactive, not proactive. No. You want to be proactive, not reactive. Reactive means you probably made a mistake somewhere. Proactive means you thought ahead and you took action before there was ever a problem. Now, once you find this place, you're probably going to be dealing with some kind of a lease. A lot of times these are commercial leases, especially if you're dealing with like a mall or a strip mall or a shopping center or something like that. And commercial leases are big, scary, terrifying documents that have all kinds of weird things in them, and you have to be very meticulous when you go through them. I'm going to recommend a lawyer. Do not use a YouTube video as a means of negotiating a commercial lease. I've done it a couple of times. When I did my first lease, I had Lloyd, who did my business plan. He helped me with it, and we went paragraph by paragraph through the whole thing, and we crossed out a bunch of stuff. Typically, boilerplate, commercial lease is going to have all kinds of things in it because they want to try and get as much control as they can, figuring that a savvy business person is going to cross all that stuff out anyways. For example, my first lease for Gamer Sanctuary had a clause in there that said they could determine what music I could play in the store. They could determine what hours I could be open until. They could determine what events I was allowed to run in the store. They could come in at any time and look at the books. Made me responsible for the entire HVAC system, which is the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. And in a commercial building, typically those are like $20,000 roof mount units that require a crane to be replaced, but at the very least requires a professional to come out with a big giant ladder and climb up on your roof and then tell you it was $800 to fix it. So you want to try and get away from as much of that as you can. And you can literally go through the contract and just cross stuff out. And they will make addendums to the lease. Get a lawyer, get somebody that knows leases, that you trust, that you know knows their stuff. I was able to cross almost everything off the list I just said out of my lease, with the exception of the HVAC, which we came to an agreement that gamers would cover the first $1,000 a year, and then the property owner would cover everything beyond that. And one of the reasons I was able to negotiate that is because we spent the $200 to have an HVAC guy come out, go up on the roof of the property we were looking at, check the furnace out, and come down and give me kind of an overview of how it looked. And HVAC was fine, but it was from 1983 or 86 or something, so that gave me a lot of leverage. $200 that I didn't really want to spend, but at the same point, saved me, I don't know how many thousands of dollars later, because I want to say the 8th year, Gamer Sanctuary's HVAC did go out and they had to foot the bill. We paid $1,000 of it, and they covered the rest, so I paid for the $200 like 10 times over right there, 100 times over even. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this video was helpful for you. Subscribe to the channel if you want to get notified when new videos come out. I've got several more planned to go over a lot of the details that I learned, sometimes the hard way, opening a game store. In the meantime, if you want to see some of my best ideas on price support, then you can check out this video right over here. But until next time, thanks for watching and have a good one.